Welcome to the World of Eora, a news and lore podcast about Pillars of Eternity and Avowed. I'm your host, Eric, aka Gingerino. Thank you so much for joining me as we dive into the history, lore, and game mechanics for the worlds that Obsidian has created for us. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the World of Eora. I'm your host Eric, aka Gingerino. Thanks everyone for joining me on another episode as we dive into the history, lore, and game mechanics for Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2 and the game of Avowed. For those wondering why we pair those games together, it's because they share the same fantasy setting known as Eora. And so as the theory goes, if we dive into all these games, we can, glean some insights into how the world was written and what the flavors are of it. We can get appreciation for the world building that Obsidian has done in these games. Perhaps inspire new role plays for those games or inspire characters for tabletop role-playing games, but ultimately just to dive in and geek out about a world that we know and love. If you're new to the podcast, welcome to the show. Really happy to have you here. I'm going to signpost you to episode 0, where I signpost you further to episodes that are a little more foundational for the lore that this world has. If you want to learn about the magic or the gods or the races of the world, those are good places to start. Today will be a not bad place to start as well. We're going back into Pillars of Eternity 1, and we're going to be taking a look at one of the companions from that game known as Grieving Mother. She's one of the companions that your player character can bring alongside through your adventures in the Deerwood, which is the setting for the first Pillars of Eternity game. Grieving Mother is definitely one of the more interesting to, I guess, some people in the Pillars community, and the way she was written and presented in the game, and how you interact with her and what your particular character has an impact on for her story. And understanding who and what the Grieving Mother is, or I just guess it's just Grieving Mother, you need to understand a little bit more about the world, how magic works, what a cipher is, and the significance of how the magic of ciphers interacts with other people. Since I don't have any news that I want to go over on today's episode, we can just dive straight into the lore.
Half the locals would arrest you for trespassing and the rest would kill you outright. I'm curious, what exactly did you find there?
So as I mentioned, Grieving Mother is one of the companions that you can get in Pillars of Eternity 1, and she is a companion that is the cipher class. Throughout the entire game of Pillars of Eternity, including all of its DLCs, you have access to people that you can bring with you in your party, in your adventures, and each one of those companions kind of has a different class. So no matter what, you can experience all the classes that the game has to offer through the companions, in case you're wondering how they play. Of course, you do have to have the White March DLCs to get 3 of those, but that's besides the point. Grieving Mother is the cipher companion, and she's very interesting from not just a lore perspective, but she's also very interesting from a narrative perspective, or the writing of how the character is presented. And this should also go without saying, obviously, that we are going to get into any spoiler territory that has to do with Grieving Mother, so if you do want to experience her companion quest on your own, then be warned that there's going to be spoilers in today's episode for her. But she's an interesting character from the perspective of writing, because she is a character that is literally shrouded in illusion. And only you, the player character of Pillars of Eternity, actually can see her. You can actually see who she is. Everyone else kind of just sees this kind of like homeless old lady or something like that. When you first find Grieving Mother in the town of Deerwood, there's some narrative that pops up about the interaction that you're having with this character that you clicked on to interact with. And in the game it says, this middle-aged peasant woman is dressed in a brown leather cloth draped down to her knees. Her hands are working at separating stringy, colorless vegetables in a pile before her, stripping the heads off the long, fibrous stems with a paring knife. She discards the stems one by one, placing the heads of the vegetables into a small cradle-like basket in front of her. She doesn't greet you as you approach. You're not sure she even knows you're there. Excuse me. The woman doesn't respond. She keeps stripping the heads from the vegetables with a steady rhythm. She may be deaf. There's no indication she heard you. At first glance, she seems nothing more than a middle-aged woman, unremarkable, maybe less stern than most, who seem far more focused in weaving in her lap than her surroundings. Yet you suddenly notice she's not stripping the vegetables before her any longer. She's weaving, and the vegetable pots are now missing. She still pays you no mind, her brown locks torn and snagged from lack of washing, like many of the townsfolk you've seen. There is a strange blur to her. Even the motions of her hands seem to be playing with threads that lack color, in a shape that lacks interest. It may be that she is half-minded or deaf, but something feels wrong. As you watch, her knitting takes an odd cadence, and you have a terrible suspicion that something lurks beneath what your eyes are showing you. So this is the first interaction that your player character, the Watcher, has with the character of Grieving Mother, and we never really learn what her name is. This is just what the Watcher has decided to call her based off of the story that we hear. And it's because of your abilities as a Watcher within the game that you're actually able to see through her illusory spell. And she is using the magic of a cipher to shroud herself in illusions so that people will pay no mind to her, so that people will not be able to actually see her. She just kind of cloaked herself with magic as this peasant woman who is, cutting vegetables or weaving fabric or what have you. And it's all really interesting from the perspective of how this is able to be done. You see, a cipher is a person in the game, and they're heavily featured in Pillars of Eternity. I would say that they're kind of like the featured class of the game. And they have the unique ability to connect with another person's mind, is kind of how I put it. The cipher class is very much like a psionics class from other fantasy role-playing games. How it works in terms of like the magic is that the cipher uses the soul of another person as the focus for their magic, which is why cipher abilities in the game, if you pick a cipher class for your character, are often based on psionic attacks or mind attacks or things of that sort, is because you're using the other person's soul and you're specifically tapping into that conscious mind kind of a thing. This is also why ciphers are able to perform illusion magic, I think, pretty well within the world of Eora, because they are able to almost put into your mind something else that is not in the real world. It's not so much, I imagine anyways, it's not so much that she is literally shrouding herself in an ethereal aura that your eyes are seeing physically in front of you. It's more that she is placing the image within your mind of what it is she wants you to see. This might be how a lot of illusion magic works. It's not really, fully explained within the game. I've recently done an episode on the Archmage Ringrim, who we saw in Avowed, and she is a master of illusory magic. And being able to actually form things as well from out of nowhere kind of stuff, that's I guess more conjuration or something like that. But she is a master of illusory magic, which you can definitely see in the game of Avowed when you have to go to where her lair is. And she's able to summon projections of a town. She's able to create this world that you're interacting with. And whether you're physically there or not, I'm not really sure. But regardless, her magic is also very illusory based. Now, the question I have is her illusion magic something that she is projecting into the 3D world, or is the illusion magic that Ringrim has more projected in your mind, kind of like what Grieving Mother is? Regardless, it's an interesting side note. Grieving Mother is the cipher character, and that's the kind of person that we're talking about here, and how they interact with people, and that's how they do their magic. Every different class in the world has different ways of approaching magic. Druids, they tap into the soul essence, the soul energy that is innate in nature around them, and they harvest that energy of nature to perform nature-based spells. A wizard uses an arcane book to channel soul energy from the in-between through to the here and the now and cast a spell in that form, using a grimoire as a go-between between themselves and the actual power source. And a cipher is using the soul energy housed within a normal person to perform their magical ability. So when your character, the Watcher, first meets Grieving Mother, she remarks that you're the first to truly see her as she is. And as we said, she's using her skills as a powerful cipher to cloak herself to hide her identity from others. Her own words are, "My face is like the call of a newborn, hiding the face beneath. And for my body, I am able to wrap myself as a mother cradling her child. I am here, as you see me, but to them, their eyes see only the cloak that I wear. A peasant mother, dirty, shabby, not worth knowing." And it's interesting, as you continue adventuring around with Grieving Mother in your party, the other members of your party don't really take note of her. None of them actually come to notice her the way you, the Watcher character, have. Adair, one of the characters that you've probably met in Pillars of Eternity if you've played the game, refers to her as a nice stranger lady. Heravius is another character that you can have in the game as a companion. If you dismiss Grieving Mother from the party, Heravius will say, oh, right, the peasant woman that's been traveling with us. Like, none of these people are seeing Grieving Mother for who she actually is. This is what her powerful abilities are as a cipher. And as you continue to adventure with her, you're able to learn more about her story and why it is she is kind of concealing herself in the first place. To do that, you progress through the quest known as Dream and Memory, which is the side and companion quest for Grieving Mother, and it affects her in-game slides in the epilogue of the game. And the quest progresses whenever you have these kind of dreams or visions about something related to her. This usually happens when you're resting in-game. The first time this happens, you learn a little bit about Grieving Mother's past. You learn that through interacting with her, telling her about what you saw, about who she was. You learn that there is a location called the Birthing Bell, which is a place that expectant mothers would go to birth their child. That's where they would go, is this place called Birthing Bell. And Grieving Mother was a midwife at the Birthing Bell. We don't actually get to go to Birthing Bell in the game at all, but it's described as a place of, like, it's like almost on a piece of Audra itself, or it's a bell in the shape, Audra in the shape of a bell or something. I'm trying to remember exactly the details, but we'll get to more of its description later on. But the important part is Birthing Bell is the place that Grieving Mother practiced her, is it midwifery? I believe that's the word, is midwifery. If not, that's what I'm going to go with. And she would practice her skills there as a midwife. Now, being a midwife in the world of Eora is actually rather significant in the sense that there is literally one of the patron deities in this world is dedicated to midwives, and that is the god known as Hylia, or Hylia, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And Hylia is the goddess of birds and song and the sky and creativity and childbirth and midwifery for whatever reason. And I've done a whole episode on Hylia and why all of these different domains kind of talk to each other, like what they all have in common. And it's actually pretty interesting to think about. But so if you're interested in checking that episode out, please go ahead. But Grieving Mother would have definitely been, in the work of midwifery, and that means she also probably had a connection with Hylia, or that if she had any compatriots who were also, in that industry, they probably would have been worshipping of Hylia as well. And so there's a little bit of connective tissue there between Grieving Mother and one of the deities that we get to experience in the game of Pillars of Eternity. Now, Grieving Mother, when she was assisting expectant mothers in giving birth, she would use her powers as a cipher to read the souls of unborn children, which is something that ciphers can do. You can essentially read whether or not the soul is going to be strong or weak. And perhaps as well, you might be trying to read what kind of person that your child is going to become. Because this world runs on a cycle of reincarnation, so this soul that she's reading would have had a past life, and perhaps she could maybe get an idea or a flavor for what past lives this person had lived, and maybe that would give an indication of what kind of life this next iteration of that soul would be like. And she would use these readings of souls and tell the mother about them. However, she does admit that oftentimes the readings were fabricated, and they're based on what the expectant mother wanted. And so, in a sense, the Grieving Mother was actually, reading the signs from what the mother wanted, and she was kind of giving her that information. Now, she believes that she was doing these women and their children a service. As you continue to travel with Grieving Mother, you have another disturbing dream. And when you inquire to her about the dream, as well as the Audra chimes that she wears on her wrists, she opens up about more of her history. She brings up the Hollowborn crisis, which was a massive crisis that was going on at the time of Pillars of Eternity 1, where children are being born without souls. They are essentially these empty vessels. You can think of it almost like a car that's turned on, but no one's behind the wheel. It's just an empty, biological machine. There's no person inside of the body. That's kind of the idea of what a person born without a soul is like. And that's why it's called the Hollowborn crisis, because you have all of these children that are being born hollow in that sense. And so it is a big crisis, because that's the future generation. All these kids are being born, and so many of them are being born without a soul, and nobody really understands why. And it would be especially noted by people who were in the midwife industry, such as Grieving Mother. So she brings up the fact that the Hollowborn crisis was happening and how she experienced it when she first had a child that was birthed that was in fact Hollowborn. She doesn't quite open up to you about the full truth of what happened when she was working as a midwife at Birthing Bell during the Hollowborn crisis, but there is clearly something important that occurred to her that has impacted who she is and why she is the way she is now. You have another dream while traveling with Grieving Mother, and this time it illuminates a little bit more of her story. What ended up happening was there was this child that was born hollow, and as Grieving Mother was already kind of in the habit of telling mothers the things that they wanted to hear, she was able, I think, to justify and rationalize convincing the mother that their child was not Hollowborn. But she didn't do this through any means of rational argument. She didn't say, hey, I know it looks like your child's Hollowborn, but they're actually not. No, she does kind of the same thing that she did with you when you very first met Grieving Mother in the town of Deerford. And that is, she used her cipher abilities to implant, not in this case visuals, but I suppose perhaps, but she implanted ideas and beliefs into the mother. And so she used her cipher abilities to convince these women that their children were whole and healthy, that they were in fact not Hollowborn. But as these mothers would return to the village that she was stationed outside of, and more mothers would come and deliver more Hollowborn children, she would continue to use this magic to hold these new moms in this belief that their children were not Hollowborn, that in fact their children were healthy and fine. And she justified this because when these mothers believed that their children were not Hollowborn, they took better care of them. They gave them a chance to actually live. And, with the hope, I'm sure, from Grieving Mother's perspective, that maybe one day the Hollowborn crisis will be resolved and these children will have souls again. Or at the very least, that these Hollowborn children will be cared for properly rather than, discarded or neglected in some way, shape, or form. But over time, she was performing all this magic, and it became too taxing for her to hold all of it together. As well, one of the mothers who she had performed these cipher abilities on to maintain this illusion, she became so focused for the care of her Hollowborn child that she neglected to even feed herself. And this mother was one day found dead because she was malnourished. And this broke Grieving Mother, and it also broke the illusion that she held over the town, causing her to flee that area after this illusion broke. Seemingly, all these mothers coming to realize that their children are in fact Hollowborn and not these whole and lively children that they thought they had. And that's why you have Grieving Mother where she is in the game of Pillars of Eternity, in Deerford, she's cloaking herself from everyone else. I think the trauma of what she went through causes her to isolate herself, which is actually something that people do when they're traumatized or they're incredibly depressed, is we isolate. That's a very natural response. And she uses the only thing that she knows how is her cipher abilities to do that. And in the way she ran away was a lot like the things that she was doing with the mothers, that she was deciding what other people needed to see, and she's implanting those ideas into the minds of people. And it's a really cool idea, from a writing perspective of like what a person with the right abilities can do within this world, and I find that interesting, even if her story is a tragic one. At the end, you can complete her quest Dream in Memory by either wiping her memories or letting her live with her memories, because as a watcher you have some capacity to have a say in that. If you don't wipe her memories and force her to live with what she has, she seeks a place that she might do penance for what she did at Birthing Bell. She returns to the town of Deerford, where to the astonishment of the villagers she delivers the first healthy child in over a decade, so a non-Hollowborn child. If, however, you choose to have her memories wiped, she will actually return to Birthing Bell unaware of what happened in the village nearby, and that it is actually completely desolate. There's no one that lives in that village anymore. And, we're not actually told exactly what happens in the village, but you can read between the lines that, like, the catastrophe that she brought on that village from performing her illusion magic, even if it came from a place of good intention, it wrecked the town. It destroyed everyone there. And we don't know the details of what happened, but she clearly had, I think, an influence on that. And that is the companion of Grieving Mother, a companion we never learned the name of, who's got a tragic backstory and has rather powerful abilities as a cipher to conceal herself and implant ideas and memories into other people. And, some have to wonder if she did any of that in the game that, perhaps Obsidian could use to rewrite the canon if they ever wanted to. And I've always found it interesting that when you bring her along with you, that the other characters never notice her. So she's one of the most interesting characters for sure within the game of Pillars of Eternity. Not as fun for me to play along with, simply because she doesn't have a lot of banter and dialogue with the other characters, but very interesting from a lore perspective and a writing perspective. But that's everything about Grieving Mother for today. Let's close out today's episode.
Is an oath worth the weight of a crown?
If you liked today's episode, and I hope you did, please send me an email, worldofeora@gmail.com. Let me know what you thought, if you had any questions, or if there's anything you think that I missed I should have mentioned. I'm not the lore master of the world, I just happen to be a guy behind a microphone talking about it. If you're new to Pillars of Eternity, or you're new to Avowed, and you want someone to talk with about the game, or you want any ideas, or you have questions, please let me know. I might not be the all-time expert in these games, but I definitely love conversations around this stuff. If you want to support the show, you can do so at ko-fi.com/worldofeora. That's ko-fi.com/worldofeora. I don't expect people to support the show in that way. It's just an option for people who want to do that, who like supporting the things that they enjoy. If you do want to support the show, but you don't want to do so in that particular way, please consider leaving a rating and or review, or just engaging on the platform that you're listening to this podcast on. It helps the algorithm pass this along to other people who have the similar podcast tastes as you do. But the most important thing you can do to support the show is, just start a conversation. Send me an email and get the ball rolling that way. And talk about games or about this world, or any thoughts or questions or ideas that you even have. If you're starting up a tabletop role-playing game and you want some insights or anything like that, love having those conversations. As for what I've been playing, which is what I usually talk about at this point in the episode, it's still Grounded 2. Big shock and awe there. I've told you the last couple episodes I'm going to be playing it for a while, and I still am definitely playing Grounded 2. Me and my crew have got to the end game. We haven't beaten the boss yet. We kind of got distracted with building a whole bunch of random bases. I'm currently trying to build a multi-tiered village base on this one tree that has mushrooms sticking out of it. I'm not very good at designing bases. I'm not great at creating aesthetically pleasing bases or homes in games like these, but I like the challenge. I kind of wish I hadn't started this particular challenge, because it's a huge pain in the ass getting these resources from on the ground up this tree where, because you're only a centimeter tall in this game, and building the base that way. But it's been rewarding to have something focused to do, right? I have this project in this game that I'm working on, and I like that I can also go to other people's bases and see what kind of things they're working on, because you can lay down blueprints for what you want to complete, and I can help complete some of that stuff for them. I like being able to do that. It's been a good game for me to play at the moment. I'm currently going through an insomnia, which has been really difficult. I've always thought insomnia must suck, and I didn't realize it until now that I actually am experiencing it for over a month at this point in time, just how debilitating it can be. So that has been a challenge, and Grounded 2 has been a great game to play because it's something I'm familiar with. It's a comfort game, and it gives me a good distraction, and it also has a multiplayer aspect, so I can play with my brother and my friends. And that's, I'm glad that it's there, and I'm really happy for that. Obsidian delivered another great game, and I can't wait to see what they do over this next year or so with early access. And then later this year, there's also the Outer Worlds too, so hopefully I'm in a little bit better of a place sleep-wise to play that game. But yeah, that's what I've been playing, and that's everything for today's episode. Thanks, everyone, for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Be sure to send me an email if you have any questions or comments or criticisms. But yeah, that's everything for today. Thanks, everyone, for listening to today's episode. I'm your host, Eric, aka Gingerino, and I'll see you guys next time.